Let's get, though, right to the breaking news, and that would be the release of 6 years of Donald Trump's taxes by Democrats. CNN had a video on it, and here it is. Links in the description, by the way.
House Democrats releasing 6 years worth of former President Trump's tax returns, giving deeper insight into his personal financial situation. Right now, CNN is sifting through the hundreds of documents that were just released in the last hour. But the former president is already responding. CNN national correspondent Kristen Holmes joins me now to break it all down. Kristen, walk us through what we're learning from these tax returns. Again, the caveat being they just came out an hour ago, and there's a lot of data here, and also how the former president is responding.
So, as you said, we have a team combing through literally hundreds and hundreds of pages. But what we've been able to confirm so far is that Trump paid a very low amount of income tax in his first and last year of the presidency. We're talking about 2017, he only paid $750. 2018 and 19, it was combined $1.1 million in income tax. And 2020, it was $0. Now, that $0 is important, and here's why. What we hope that these tax returns will show is not just the raw data of the numbers, but it's actually looking at the detailed documents that were provided to give us some sort of insight into his businesses. Are they really as successful as he has said? And I talked to a number of tax experts who say that $0, that indicates that there might have been some faltering business. Is it really just strategic accounting, which we know Trump has boasted about for years? He even said in 2016 that it was smart not to pay taxes when he was talking with Hillary Clinton about why he wouldn't release them. But is it actually business losses, which is important when you think about the political ramifications of a man who ran on the fact that he was a wealthy and therefore successful businessman. And of course, Trump is agitated about this release. He has already issued a statement. He said Democrats shouldn't have done this. And
I'm going to pause them for a second before they move on. Don't forget that that was part of his pitch to the American people. It's a nonsense pitch. The American government is not a business and should not be run like one. But his pitch was, I am good at business, so I will be good at running this country. And if it turns out just on a very basic measurement scale that he is in fact not good at business, that is a yet another lie he told, and this one being a core part of his candidacy.
He went on to say the great USA divide will now grow far worse. The radical left Democrats have weaponized everything. But remember that this is a dangerous two-way street. And he released a video last week as part of his 2024 campaign, essentially calling on Republicans to start looking into Biden's finances and to Biden's family. So that's what he's referring to there.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Yes. Dangerous two-way street. What exactly is he suggesting there? I'm watching some of these clips raw, as in I've read articles surrounding them, but not watched the clips themselves. I like doing that so I can give you a live reaction. But of course, I have to load them up, so I do see part of them. But yeah, please make it a law that everybody's got to release their taxes if they're running for government. We should know what your finances are. We should know who you owe money to. We should know who owes you money. He's saying it's a dangerous two-way street. There's nothing dangerous. It is a two-way street. He's correct. I would love, for example, for Nancy Pelosi to have her taxes combed through in fine detail, because she has too much money for somebody that has held the job she has held for as long as she's held. This is true of basically everybody on the national political level. Their bank accounts are too big for their what they should be given their paychecks.
talks about a two-way street.
And of course, the GOP is taking over the House in mere days. They're going to have a lot of oversight. We also know that House Ways and Means Chairman Richard Neal put out a statement this morning after this came out. What did he say? Of course, he's the Democrat.
Right. And he said, Congress serves as a check on the executive branch, and our committee is entrusted with oversight of our revenue system. A president is no ordinary taxpayer. They hold power and influence unlike any other American. And with great power comes greater responsibility. And of course, the important thing to note here is that Trump set an enormous amount, he broke an enormous amount of precedent when he was running for president and then was president. He became the first president in modern history not to release his taxes. This was
for clarity, the last president that didn't do that was Nixon. Show you the company this guy's in. Yeah, he's the first president since Richard Nixon to not do that.
He chose to do. And on top of that, this is something that for decades he has shielded from the public. And one other thing I want to quickly touch on that we're looking for here is foreign entities.
Ooh, okay, so we're going to get to that in a moment. But you should understand why Trump is so obsessed with his image. It is, I'm sure it's got a lot to do with vanity, but it's also because the only reliable way he has actually legitimately generated money has been to sell the rights to his name. So his appearance of being rich is how he has gained money. He does that through licensing his name onto properties, or rather he did. Since he so publicly shit the bed as president, it hadn't been working so well. But he did run a scheme where he would put his name onto a property, and his name, for people that were gullible, equated to fancy. And even though he had nothing else to do with the property other than it was called Trump whatever, he would get 10% of the income for that property. So if he no longer has the appearance of a rich guy, that doesn't have any more value. So of course he was hiding his true wealth because it wasn't going to live up to his reputation.
Bank accounts. That's something.
Now we go into foreign ties.
We're going through these additional documents for. Does he have foreign bank accounts? Are there any foreign-owned businesses? The reason that's important is because you remember this was a big topic of conversation during his entire presidency. So that is something we're going to be looking at closely as we go through these hundreds of pages.
Right, a lot of data there to sort through. All right, Kristen, stay with us. We want to talk a little bit more about this, but we also want to bring in CNN political analyst Margaret Talib.
I'm sure you get this, but to absolutely underline it, if he's in business with foreign entities, that means his decision-making as leader of our country is going to be affected. That means when he's dealing with those foreign entities, like, say, Russia, China, the sort of folks that we sometimes have to get tough with, those are going to be deeply affected by him not wanting to affect his own finances. The fact that he appears to have been hiding dealings with foreign governments should be of concern to you.
Managing editor for Axios, and Stephen Rosenthal, senior fellow at Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center. Great to have you all here. Margaret, let's start first with you. As I mentioned, the GOP taking control of the House in just mere days, timing everything here. The Democrats releasing these at the last minute. They kind of could.
The New York Democrats
we know that Republicans are planning for a lot of oversight investigations, but is there any indication you think that they're going to try to push back on this specifically?
I think they're going to message around it, and we've already seen that. But Republicans actually have an opportunity right now. If they want to, they can push to put this in legislation so that future presidents, including Democratic presidents, will be required to release this. That's not where their messaging is at right now, and it might never get there. Are they going to use this to try to require more disclosure, not only from Joe Biden, but from everyone in Joe Biden's family? Probably. But the truth of the matter is there's a difference between running for president of the United States and being related to somebody or in somebody's family or even a candidate for other kinds of office. This has long been what Americans expect. And the messaging from Republicans so far has been that if they can do this to Donald Trump, they can do this to you. Like the ordinary person will somehow have all of their voluminous,
would they?
tax information revealed. It's, first of all, simply not true. Second of all, there's no interest in making
There it is.
an ordinary member of the public's tax returns public for the world to see. And third of all, if you did, what would it show? Most people can file an easy return. Many people who earn a fraction of what Donald Trump's holdings are paid much more in taxes in 2020, to the best of everyone's knowledge. And so it is, so far, the messaging is kind of a scare tactic, but it's really not on point. There is a completely different standard, and the polling shows that huge majority, somewhere between 2/3 and 4 out of 5 Americans, say that former President Trump's tax return should be made public.
I am so glad to hear corporate media finally learning how to talk about this stuff honestly. Going right to the polling is important, because you don't want to give the impression that what Republicans are talking about are the concerns of the average citizen. They simply are not, and they have never been. I don't see any average folks, anybody that makes less than $2 million a year, having a problem if you take out the prep work the GOP does to rush to their Fox News propaganda arm and coach their people ahead of time. If you get to somebody before they've heard a GOP rant and just ask them, should politicians have to show their taxes? You're going to get a yes. Obviously, yes. You want to know if they're compromised or not. And you can be compromised without having done anything wrong. But you ought to know who's in your politicians' pockets.
Well, and it is the precedent. And to your point, the average American is not running for president or the president. There are very few Americans doing that. Stephen, can you explain some of the things you'd be looking for that would be, say, a blockbuster revelation beyond what we've already learned in bits and pieces, or key nuggets that could be gleaned from this?
Well, we just got the documents posted, and I've been looking closely at.
I just want to say real quick, if you want to learn how to read media easier, every time you get somebody on with a bad sounding mic like that, get ready for good information. That's somebody who was worth bringing on, even though they don't normally do this kind of thing. So get ready for, and apparently I'm going to just assume it, senior fellow there, Urban Brookings. Anyway, get ready for somebody with an interesting take.
At foreign accounts and foreign sources of income in the last hour. What strikes me immediately is
I should have
that
talked over that.
Closely at.
Going back a little bit, here we go.
Well, we just got the documents posted, and I've been looking closely at foreign accounts and foreign sources of income in the last hour. What strikes me immediately is that in 2015, 16, and 17, Donald Trump had foreign accounts in the UK, Ireland, China, and also looks like St. Thomas, ST. But then in 2018, only UK. And 2019 and 20, only UK. And so that's one of the things I'm looking at. And we know from last month's trial of the Trump Organization in New York that Trump's accountants, tax accountants, said that his presidential returns had to be squeaky clean. So I suspect that things got cleaned up some later on.
Remember, this guy,
and it is
this guy selected to head the IRS, a fella who had put out an opinion article in California. He was a California tax lawyer. He put out an opinion article that said that Trump shouldn't have to release his taxes. And so then Trump made him the head of the IRS. Republicans gonna Republican.
interesting, and that's a little bit of what Kristen was talking about earlier too. Is that you were saying that it's going to be key about foreign entities. Where were the investments? Where was the money going? What foreign entities was he involved with? We also know that President Trump was supposed to have a mandatory audit from the IRS, and he didn't have one 3 out of 4 years. he was always so paranoid around his taxes, as you alluded to earlier. Do you think
He didn't have one 3 out of 4 years, and he only got one once House Democrats inquired with the IRS about the audits. They asked, where are we with these? And on that very day, the very day of the inquiry, is when the IRS started to do them. These are mandatory, as in the IRS didn't have a choice as to whether or not they could do them. They were required to do them. Mandatory by policy, not by law. That is hugely important. The giving away, not giving away, but the revealing of taxes has been required by tradition, has been required by decency, has been required by common sense. But Trump was able to get away with not doing it because it was not required by law. So this, going back to the beginning of the clip, this Republican threat to to say, oh, if they can do it to anybody. Yes, that's exactly what we want. Make it law. All these things that are policy but not law, meaning there's not a enforceable arm of it. They need to be made into law. And we should be looking at every stage of politics where we have policy propping up our system, where what we need is law with consequences written in to them.
that there's any appetite to codify this into law from it would have to come through Congress, but also, doesn't this just speak to just the broader paranoia of Trump's feelings around his money and his taxes?
Yeah, and I do think this goes to politics in general. When you're thinking about Trump, we can always say, is his base going to turn on him for everything that happens, right? Any kind of glitch in the order. And is this something that's going to do that? Probably not. But when you look at Trump, the things that he really cares about are his image and the narrative that he built for the last several decades before he ran for president, before he even was considering that level of politics. This is something that he sold his entire life on, the Trump Hotel. It was his brand, and it's associated with success and wealth. So that is part of why there have been rumors for decades around New York that he might not be as wealthy as he seemed. In fact, I talked to some of his closest associates back from those days who said they believed he would never run for president because it would be too much financial scrutiny. And they just didn't believe that because he is so private and so invested in not sharing this information publicly, that he just couldn't get through that and run for president. Of course, obviously he did, and he did not release his taxes and broke precedent there. But yes, this is a big part of how he even ran back in 2016. He said that if he could be the successful of a businessman, then he could successfully run a nation. And that's why we're looking so closely at just how successful those businesses were. And that's why it's so interesting when you look at the fact that, yes, some of this is strategic accounting. This is something that people who have this kind of money and these kind of resources do. They claim these large losses and then they carry over millions and millions of dollars. We already know he carried over $105 million in 2015, $73 million. These are losses that he carries over in order to offset his income tax and pay less money. But when you look at that 2020 number, did that actually come from those offsets, or was this a COVID number coming at that time where businesses were severely impacted? And so it's just going to be interesting to paint a picture of this because we only know one narrative, and it has been Donald Trump's narrative that he is a wealthy, successful businessman, and that is what gives him this power and this strength in this country.
The full clip is something worth checking out. Do it with your critical left eyes. Understand that you are hearing corporate media for the first time addressing these things seriously, and so it's difficult for them. Also, this is a piece of breaking news. I got to commend everybody up there. Kristen Holmes. These three folks are unfamiliar to me, but I'll be watching for more from them. CNN does not always nail it, but I feel like today they did, and it was a pretty astute assessment of Trump's taxes. These 6 years of taxes you're going to hear more about in the next couple of days. because a lot of questions get raised, particularly when you see that he had apparently a bank account in China, and that went away during his presidency. There are questions to answer there.